Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, David.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Election of officers. Fred, you want to talk about that?
Sure, we've had to, Mr. Chair, members of the board, your nomination committee met recently. As you recall, we have three positions that are typically up for renewal annually, and the nomination committee endorsed or nominated the following three individuals. Mr. Charakav, if I hope I'm correct on that right, as the chair, Mr. Albright as the vice chair, and Ms. Robinson as the secretary. So that is your slate of officers nominated by the nomination committee, and we're looking for the board's endorsement or the committee's endorsement.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second. Thank you, Mr. Quigley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Thank you. Ready for item 4, financial update?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of CART. My name is James Tao. I am the RTA budget manager and will be providing an overview of the fiscal year 2024-2025 RTA budget. This year's budget preparation was like that of previous budget cycles. We began with the preparation of revenue estimates and budget development to closely resemble the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and any intergovernmental agreements or IGAs in process. The FY 2024-25 RTA budget was approved at the May 23rd board meeting. Budget adoption is required prior to July 1st. Following adoption of the budget, we begin the process of rollover or carry forward of unexpended funds following the close of the fiscal year on June 30th. The program dollars that remain unexpended at the conclusion of the fiscal year are carried over to the following fiscal year, once rollover adjustments have been agreed upon in coordination with our jurisdictional partners. The total RTA budget for fiscal year 2025 is $104,937,657. Excise tax or transaction privilege tax revenue collections are stronger than projected. Collections averaging almost $10.3 million per month, with a year-over-year growth of 3.7%. Yellow Business and Research Center projection for FY 2024 was just over $119 million, with final collections totaling $123.6 million. Eller's FY 2025 projection forecasts almost $123 million in excise tax revenue, with other revenues projected to be about $11.3 million. Total revenues are projected $138,122,000. For FY 2025, the roadway element is the largest part of the budget, with $51,866,000 programmed, while environmental and economic vitality and the transit element carried total budgets of $640,000 and nearly $32.2 million respectively. Our debt service is reduced to $15.2 million in fiscal year 2025 thanks to the recent retirement of the 2014 bonds. Projected revenues are just over $138 million. Expenditures are estimated to be nearly $105 million. With revenues projected to exceed expenditures, we should see an end of year budget balance of just over $33 million. Following the RTA policy of reserving 10% of tax revenue leaves an estimated $20.5 million of restricted funds available for project programming at the board's discretion. And as always, RTA staff will continue to coordinate regularly with lead agencies for updated cost and cash flow estimates. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my update. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? None, we'll move on to number 5.
Oh, you are giving me 55 minutes for me. You guys are. Yes, I can do it. To add the companion piece to what James provided on the financial, I'll go ahead and give you guys all a status update on where we stand with the project, similar to what we've done in the past meetings. By all means, jump in as I go along. If there's something I gloss over, you want to ask a question, just pop right on in and I can pause and take whatever you need. So Starting off, these are gonna go in order by project number on the ballot, so they're not sequential in terms of upcoming delivery activities, although there is some overlap on that, but I am following the ballots layout on this. First one is Tangerine Road. This is what we refer to as phase 2A with the town of Marana. This is going essentially from I-10 over to what's called Marana Tech Drive, roughly about 2 mile stretch on that. They're using a construction manager at risk delivery method. The contractor's been brought on board. Design's all complete on this. Right-of-way transactions have been finalized. And the contractor was looking to start some of the initial activities last week, I believe, with the installation of a joint utility trench, as well as some of the grading and some of the initial drainage work that was going to be happening up on the north side of the roadway. So they'll get the utility work all going, as well as the outside piece, and then come start in on the lane work. It'll still look, taste, and feel like construction activities are happening up there. One key item to note, though, is Marana's doing several other activities in parallel with this, notably improvements at the I-10 interchange, which are independent of the RTA project. But the town's been working very closely with ADOT and the developer to ensure everything's integrated. So that activity will probably be firing up later this fall and will overlap in terms of construction. The next phase is phase 2B, which essentially goes from Tech Drive all the way up to Dove Mountain and ties into the portion that was completed at the east back in 2018. This is at about 30% design level. There's some initial activity underway with the Corps of Engineers as we evaluate the particularly regulated waterways, washes, all those kind of things to make sure we got the proper guidance and direction. Funding on this one is targeted for construction in fiscal year 28, which could be as early as summer of 27. So we're still kind of trying to get the first piece underway. Then they'll start design activities to start getting more of this effort underway here in the upcoming couple of years on that. Moving down to Silver Bell for phase 2. This is relates to Nino Del Cerro. As you recall, the very northern piece from Del Cerro up to Ina has been deferred by the RTA board into RTA next. So this is essentially the last piece to complete that's under active efforts. The design is complete, right-of-way is complete. The utility relocation's all been completed. And right now this project, the actual advertisement for construction is dependent on kind of the last couple of clearances, as well as when the additional funding necessary to move this project forward can be brought to bear, and that can be discussed in conjunction with the board as well. So right now, a little squishy on timeframes on that. We're hopeful that this will be underway sometime early next year is our target timeframe.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
What are some of the delays that are holding up or final approvals that are going on?
So one of the big ones that we've been working on, this is kind of the engineering dorky side of it. There's a giant water line that's underneath. And so there's been a lot of work activities with Tucson Water to ensure that none of that got impact. So that's all the protection. That's the exact location. Make sure that the work operations aren't going to cause any headaches and hassle. And when I say big, it's about 42 inches.
Right.
You can imagine if that got. So that's been especially critical over the last several months, is to ensure that's taken care of. And then now moving forward, the last of the permit activities, they're working on with the Corps of Engineers, and then we're going to be working with them. The problem is we need additional funding over what's already been programmed in the fiscal year 25-29 TIP. So that's got to be identified, found, and brought to bear. Whether the city can bring that, identify it, and then move it forward, or whether that's going to have to look for other sources for available.
So the estimated shortfall is,
Roughly 5.5.
okay,
Matt.
thank you.
And I missed who else had another question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Could you go back to 1?
I'm so sorry. I flew through too fast. My goodness.
So can you give us the financials on these projects? What's been spent, what's projected to be spent, and where is the money coming from?
I didn't bring any of that information on it, and that would be a whole separate discussion that would probably take an extra time. So we've got it. I just don't have it handy.
Okay, can you get it to us? I've asked for this multiple times and I have yet to see it in one of these meetings. I'm looking at the tip for project 1A. And it breaks it down into HERF money. I don't see any RTA money on Tangerine anymore.
So if I may, there is RTA dollar or money on Tangerine. I believe there's $17 million program, but the majority of it is for
Okay, so where would I see it? The 17 million is listed as Marana in the tip.
That's a separate amount.
That's a separate
Yeah.
amount. So where would I see the RTA money?
Well, if you're looking at the tip, it should be programmed in fiscal 24 and then roll to 25. So it'll be early in the program. The outer years are only early.
Okay, so this is the tip for 2025, 29.
Right, so we haven't gone through the roll process yet, so probably by August or September, when we administratively complete that you'll see the 17 million roll into fiscal 25.
Okay, so in the future, can you include the financials on these project updates?
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Question on Silverbill, did they ever take care of the archaeological problems there? And does that help cause a delay?
So that was, I wouldn't call it a delay as much as that was a necessary activity. It has to happen in sequence. So the archaeological, because of the cultural significance, it's the Santa Cruz River. You're gonna have all your stuff out there. It has to be done very carefully. It has to be done sequentially. So there was an advanced recovery phase that's been performed, and that was done throughout the whole corridor. Then the utility relocation could come in and take place, and they still have to have monitors on site to ensure that where they're digging complies with all the requirements, and anything that gets discovered is handled appropriately. Then they move into during the construction phase. So that's where we're at now. There will still be cultural and ongoing activity, even as parts of it where they have to pick up the road, move it, and do some of the widening so they can get to some of the undisturbed areas before. So it's been, the first phase has been done. There's still many more phases left to be done during the construction portion. And that will be all in compliance with the requirements. I wouldn't say it's delayed it, but it definitely extended the time frame associated with it.
Great, thank you.
Significant corridor. I mentioned Tucson Water just from the technical side of things, but the cultural is especially sensitive out there.
Thank you.
Can I ask you another question, Rick?
Sure.
What's the annual HERF revenues for the region?
James, what'd you have on that?
As it refers to what we.
What comes in, you're talking the annual income?
It's not jurisdictional. And yeah, HERF. Let's focus.
I believe it's around $24 million.
Yeah, about 24, 25.
Million?
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay, hit Silverbell. Okay, moving on, Sunset Road, number 8. The design activities on this have been completed. This project's actually being built in conjunction with the mainline I-10 widening, often referred to as the gap project between the two interchanges at Rutherford and Ina. Construction on the bridge portion is being fit in around how the progression of the mainline activities. So I say this one's only about 25% because the bulk of the mainline activities that have generated the effort by the crews, that's much further along at about 50%. Target completion on the overall project is, I believe, still on track for early 2026. And then that'll connect Silverbell, I-10, River. So you'll have full corridor connectivity on that. First Ave, what I call First Ave South, the design activity has just gotten underway with this. They're doing the initial phases of data collection, which is your traffic analysis, your aerial photos, your survey, all your topography. We've also had the kickoff meeting for the task force that's been established on this project. So they're geared up, they're ready to go, and we'll be starting to get into more of the specific activities, particularly around the traffic performance aspects of it, safety issues and concerns, as we then continue to unfold and progress through this. Expect to be about the 30% level or a DCR, design concept report completion, targeting the end of next year. And at that point in time, they'll also identify next steps and then possible implementation. Does it make sense to do it at once? Some projects offer opportunities where you can break them into smaller pieces and kind of get a more manageable delivery of it. This one has a separate bridge that's part of it, but there may be some opportunities where that arises out of that. So they'll be incorporating that assessment as well.
is there a funding gap on this one?
This one does have a funding gap on it as well. We have partial construction funding in the 25-29 tip, but not all of it, as with several projects.
So what's the gap?
Oh, good God.
So, I mean, I believe the ballot was around $73 million. And to assist during the process of building the new tip, the city agreed or requested for some of that funding, about $7 million of the funding on first to be placed on Silver Bell. And then we would fill that gap at a later date. So the current programming on first is actually only about 66 million. So it's actually below ballot currently as it's shown in the tip. I don't know if you want to get into project costs at this point, but that's about the tip.
Yeah, without having it right off the tip of my fingertips, I'm gonna say it's in that 70 to $80 million range.
Yeah, I recall seeing 130 million for project costs.
Yeah, at one time, that's what we were carrying on that. We've been working to get updated numbers on that. We'll be presenting that to the board as it comes in over the next couple of weeks.
So any ideas how that gap will be filled?
Not at this point in time. We've got several items we're looking at that we're putting together, and we'll be sharing with the board to see if anything jumps out to them. Grant Road at the Union Pacific Railroad, this project's banging along. They're at about the 60% milestone on this one. Working closely to coordinate in with the upcoming Pascuyaki Casino that you've all probably been hearing or reading about. So a lot of tight coordination on that effort and activity to ensure that those things open, operate, and there's not a big hindrance or hiccup as you would expect with multiple activities going on this. So at the 60%, there's still the right-of-way activity left to go, permitting, utility coordination, and then the upcoming construction. This is one project that, and I'll be hitting upon this theme as you see some of these come along, is we have to hit period compliance. So projects where we've been able to get a phase going, Tangerine, Silver Bell, Sunset, as described on the ballot, it's a single project. By getting those pieces going, we've met the necessary legal ballot compliance. So we're fully on board with that. This is, as well as a couple others I'll hit, has to start before that June 30, 2026 timeline. Now they're on track with that, and that'll be a close one to watch as it goes forward and as we continue to coordinate with the city on that. Downtown Links, another project that's actively under construction. Phases 1 and 2 have been complete. They're about 60% through the current phase, with half of it basically from Stone Avenue to the east. That's been open, operating, dedicated, and fully functional. So they're working on the last piece that essentially connects St. Mary's, goes underneath the railroad tracks. They're actively banging away on that one. And the last update we got from the city is they're on track to finish this probably sometime next spring, summer, and be fully complete with the whole corridor. So they're working on it right now. If you drive by there, you see the big hole underneath as they're going underneath the railroad tracks, but they're making great progress on this project.
Yes, question. Seems like the timing has slipped a little bit on that project. I was thinking it was going to be ready in January of 25. And the city say why?
Railroad. Weather?
No.
The railroad. I know, I'm shocked. This, I know you're gonna, can't believe I'm gonna say it. What they run into it because of the close coordination with the railroad activities, all the stuff that's involved with it, not just their crews, not just the rail work, but there's also the coordination reviews. We have to send in wall plans. Okay, well, they're gonna give us new guidance. That's gonna be coming in 2 weeks. 2 weeks becomes 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So back, forth, iterations, things like that. The food chain of life, the railroad sits a little higher than we do. We cross their facilities, not they cross ours. So timeframes like that, and they add up and they multiply. On top of that, last night hit downtown. There's going to be weather effects. We know that on construction. So those have been the primary factors. Grant Road phases 3 and 4. This project has also started construction. They're fully underway. They're doing the initial deep activities, working from the west to the east. So the water, wastewater, storm drain, they're basically trying to get in there, do everything deep, and then they'll bring it up to the surface and do the main line widening that everybody gets to see. Combination of early morning work, daytime work. So they're trying to find that sweet spot where they can get optimal operations, make sure the safety of the crews and the traveling public are all met. But so far they're underway with it. Progress has been good coming out of the gate. All the materials are on hand and they're on track to finish this up, I believe, late 2026. That's their target time frame. So roughly 2 to 2.5 years from now. and which is a good aggressive pace on a project this big of that complexity. So they are moving forward with that. They're doing real work coming up.
How far east does that go?
I think it's called Venice Place, which is just to the west of Swan. The Swan intersection essentially is built to its full optimal configuration, so we'll bolt into the end of that. This also includes the big reconstruction at Alvernon. Everybody always hears that. If you've driven that, you know what a complication that is, and this will fully reconstruct it. So that's kind of the dividing line in there.
Are they gonna add more Michigan left turns?
They are. Now you were gonna ask me probably where. Alvernon gets one, and I can't remember where a couple of the other ones were. Not every intersection is getting one though, and I'll hit upon this on the next phase. Part of the design effort, they wanted to broach the whole concept to make sure everybody could understand it and as they implemented it. But some intersections do work well under traditional configuration. So the design team's able to optimize those locations and say a standard configuration will work just as well, and we can offset and avoid and minimize and mitigate the impact from that. So a very good combination, a very good application, and that's that refined engineering that takes place. Which segues perfectly into Grant Road phases 5 and 6, which is now the central 2-mile portion. So the city worked at it from the west with 1 and 2, hopped down to the east end, and now is coming back to the middle piece. Design activities on this one are at 90% completion level, so they've been banging along full speed ahead while the other one's being constructed. With the right-of-way, utility relocation and construction all remaining, and to a question I anticipate, Ruth, coming from you, this one also needs the additional funding for both the right-of-way activities and the construction efforts on that. So we've been sharing with the public, we've been meeting, I've been joining in with task force meetings when they've been updating them, explaining the hierarchy of how the available funding is going to go, and then why it's going to have to wait for available funding to be identified to be brought forward. So as the board progresses on that, as we work through our hierarchy, this project is in line to get it. The key thing to know, going back to that compliance requirement, because we've built stages 1 and 2, we've met our necessary compliance requirements. So now it's recognizing when we need to come in and deliver the remaining pieces.
So could this project, since it's probably gonna fall after the end of RTA, just get stalled out forever with no RTA revenues?
The only way a project can get stalled, I guess, or deferred is by board action, and this has not been identified for any.
But they
So
won't have any money for it either.
Yeah, at this point, we haven't identified it, so that's still the part of the challenge to be able to find out what we're gonna be doing and where the additional revenues can come from.
Okay, so at 24 million a year from HERF, it's not gonna be funded.
So I'll give you a real short version because it's a very in-depth part that we're working on for the board. There are possible funding sources for the local jurisdictions if their responsibilities for additional portions, contributions are kicked in. There is the possibility of revenue from surplus property sales. That was a condition of the original RTA plus the IGAs, is that any parcels are bought. And then in turn, you just define the right of way. So I buy this much because I had to totally acquire it. It was an uneconomic remainder, but I only need this much for the right of way, so I can sell that. Then those proceeds come back to the RTA for use by the board. So there are some of those, plus we're also shaking the seat cushions to see if we can find anything that's been tied up in IGAs that we just haven't terminated and could be able to free up and then reprogram.
Is 22nd Street under the same circumstances?
I'll hit upon that one in a second because that one's got slightly different.
Okay.
Great segue, Ruth, thank you. 22nd Street, this is what we refer to as the 22nd Street Bridge. This is the official limits from Keno to Tucson Boulevard. Phase 1 was built with the Keno interchange that was reconstructed several years ago. The team is going all out with multiple efforts in parallel. So to your point, Ruth, this project is one of the ones that the city went out and identified additional funding sources in the form of a raise grant that was awarded, I think 2 years ago. They're going through that now. That's been identified, awarded. But before the money can become active, there's an agreement that has to be put in place between the city and the federal government. That's underway as well. Plus the final design plans, plus the environmental clearance, plus the final right-of-way, plus the updates to the railroad. And I can go on. I'm giving you the short version of that. So the city right now is doing all those activities in parallel, watching, tracking, and monitoring them to be able to bring it home. And the goal and time frame is to be able to go out and start construction on this one in early 2025. They believe they can do this over the next 6 months and essentially complete all those activities. And the partners have all conveyed that that's a realistic, albeit aggressive, assumption as well. So that's where 22nd stands on top of all that, because the federal component and some of the regional funding, not just for the SCBG, was available to program for this. And the board council have programmed that to this project as well. So this is probably one of the more complicated ones in the region. And it's matching that not only in the construction side, but on the design side as well. So a lot of logistics, and I am giving you the short version on that.
The bridge remaining open,
Pardon me?
the bridge remaining open.
Nope, that's still gonna be closed. They've stood by that, and that's gonna be necessary for safety, overall operations, and the efficiency of delivery.
And the railroad.
That they're gonna make that happy too. But yeah, that had been communicated by the city, I wanna say almost a year and a half ago. A couple of concerns, issues with that, but overall that was met with pretty good support. And then some of the tweaks and revisions resulting from some of the public feedback.
So
So,
the bridge to a highway, that's in RTA next.
yes, that's been deferred to RTA next, that's correct.
Which bridge is that?
No, the last piece, so from Keno, all the way over to I-10.
Okay.
That stretch down there by the Santa Rita Park, so that has been deferred, and will be part of our TA next. The Brazos Aviation Parkway, this is advanced right-of-way acquisition effort, so this was just money that was gonna be contributed to ADOT as they progress that effort. There's really nothing to it. This is gonna be a contribution that ADOT can draw down on as soon as they get the design and right-of-way activities, which based on initial conversation with them, once they get the current portion under construction that's on the I-10 main line, because the Brazos Aviation and I-10 main line widening out there was all part of one monster project with 18 distinct phases. So they're breaking pieces of them moving forward. And as soon as they're ready for this one, we'll have the funding available in fiscal year 26. So they'll essentially be there for them to draw down on when they get that going. This is only a portion of the funding for design and a portion of the right of way. The construction funding will have to come from other sources, and part of that has been included as suggested for RTA next. Irvington Road, which is from the east of the Santa Cruz River to, Santa Cruz River vicinity to I-9, to east of I-19. Another great opportunity to partner up with ADOT, and that's been a common theme on this. Several of the projects up on the northwest side at Iron and Ruth Rock use the same approach, where ADOT's going to be doing improvements. In this case, they're going to be reconstructing the interchange in that area. And said, okay, we can overlap our project efforts and activities and the necessary scope features and do it all in one seamless construction. Very efficient, very effective, and it's been a very tried and true method for us. So that project right now, they're at 30%, they've crossed that milestone, but they're coming up on a 60% milestone submittal here in probably the next 1 to 2 months. With all the remaining design, permitting, construction, and right-of-way activities still to be coming. But ADOT's leading that effort, and the goal is to hopefully be under construction sometime by probably next spring, summer, fall. That's still kind of moving around a little bit. They're trying to decide the optimal time frame. Really trying to look at and say, can we hit the business community out there one time only? So they're looking at a lot of moving pieces on that, trying to gauge how that's going to best lie out. But if you've been out there, you know the number of businesses that are tucked away off that area. So that's usually been one of the goals we try to accomplish. Not always worked out, but it's certainly one we can take into account and we try to introduce very early on with our Main Street program. As you see, I hit upon several of these. This is another period 4 compliance job. Even though it's on track, everything's been set to go and it will be likely under construction by next summer. We want to make sure we're paying special attention to these projects because we have to hit that compliance.
So Rick, what portion of the funding for Irvington Road was RTA versus ADOT?
I believe the amount was about 9.6, 9.8 million, and then the rest of it's ADOT's responsibility. And with that, the primary improvements come in the form of bike pedestrian and then intersection and some profile improvements. So where ADOT was going to reconstruct it under certain configuration by throwing this money in there, blending the project scope to ensure that we've got full bike ped multimodal connectivity as well as the intersection operations been addressed.
Thank you.
Valencia Road, what we call Valencia Central, goes from I-19 to Alvernon. We're working closely with the city on this one. The IG activities have just been started in terms of preparation, coordination on that, making sure we've got a strategy for going forward on this. This is also a Period 4 compliance project. So making sure that everything's put in place so that we can hit construction on this and start that by June 30, 2026 as well. So this one hasn't started, but it should be, the city's gearing up for that one so they can jump on it as soon as we get the IGA in place. Down to the east end of Valencia, from Kolb to Houghton. This is the last of the big 6-lane reconstruction projects. Project is out to add. The design is done, right of way is done, utilities have already been relocated. When I looked at it online last week, they were scheduled to open bids this Friday. I guess that's still on track unless they wind up delaying or extending it due to any kind of questions that come in from the contracting community. But we expect construction activities to fire up on this thing by fall. And then roughly about 2.5 years to complete this one. It's relatively long for this size of a project on that. I think it's upwards of 3.5 to 4 miles, but it's also out in one of the areas that is relatively simple to work in. So the city's done a good job of leave the simple one simple. This doesn't have the complexities that Links or the Grant or the 22nd Street have. And they've managed to follow through on that. So we expect that that one's going to go forward simple and clean. This is also a period compliance project. So you're noticing a theme on that we're highlighting the ones that ensuring when we do our report and evaluations to the board as well as the legislature that we're showing we're meeting compliance requirements. 22nd Street East from Camino Seco to Houghton. Design activities just fired up on this one. In fact, we went to the kickoff meeting week before the past. So they're just now getting underway with the survey, those upfront data collection efforts that I talked about with First Avenue. Same boat, they've got a consultant on board, design efforts up and running. This one, the city is also looking to streamline quite a bit to ensure delivery obligations are met. Because it's less than 2 miles, it's very straightforward. It's a 4-lane reconstruct. The community out there has been dying to have this one in place. They even identified that this one doesn't need a task force and we can get by with open houses, website information and mailers for a community outreach. So really kind of looking at those little ways we can identify how can we go quick, where can we get it, take advantage when a community's ready, willing and wanting this one and be able to get this one in place. They've got such an aggressive pace on this one that they've adopted 22nd and 22 as kind of their operating goal slogan, which 20 or not, it's a good goal that we're setting out there to ensure that we hit the timeline. This is also another period compliance project. Harrison Road, one of the last of the period compliance projects, and this one is going to be the new bridge over the Pantano. Same thing, we've been working closely with the city on this one to get IGA efforts laid out, make sure that all the funding support, make sure that their delivery methodology can be supported or falls in line with what the necessary requirements are, and looking to kick this one off and hopefully get IGA activities wrapped up here in the next few months. And then they'll get that one going and hopefully get activities underway. Same thing, looking to make sure we're compliant by the June 30, 2026 period. This is only the bridge portion. That's all that was funded under RTA 1. If you do hear comments or activities or updates, the city does have a 4-lane project on their books that essentially has the same length. So, but that project has a different timeline than this one does. So we've confirmed that with the director and with the transportation department to make sure that any potential overlap is coordinated, but right now proceeding is 2 separate efforts. If you do hear that, ours is just the bridge. That was all that was identified in RTA 1. The last one is Houghton Road from Irvington to 22nd, or what they refer to as segment 7. 1 through 6 have been built. The very northern portion, which basically goes between Speedway and Broadway up to Tanque Verde, has been identified as the 4th deferred project that'll be in RTA next. So this one, the design activities are complete. Everything's done on that side. The right-of-way activities are underway. They expect to be done by the end of the year. But because of the nature of the Houghton corridor and kind of the backbone, if you will, to the east side development, there's a number of big utilities that have to move. Southwest Gas, Lumen, the electric, and they're not just picking up and moving out a couple feet. We're talking full relocations to the tune of about 18 months. So once all the right-of-ways in place or the property for them to go into, then they'll come along, start that activity. We're still staying in close contact on that and coordinating to identify where there's possibilities of overlap. Ideally, all contractors want a clean site. You don't want too much activity out there that gets in the way of operations or may interfere their activity on that. But we work closely to say, well, does an area free up? Is that more conducive, or do they still need you access throughout the corridor? So once that gets underway, we'll get a better feel for that. One of the key things in there that we've shared with the city and county on this is that the expansion is the responsibility of the jurisdictions. That's consistent with the state law. That's fully compliant, making sure that they understand that the 4-lane to 6-lane, because essentially the RTA paid for the 6-lane portion. I think it was Mac Way up to Golf Links, kind of sticks out in my mind. But the decision was made to expand those, so those become the responsibility of those other jurisdictions in which they lie. So we've been working with them to identify that. That'll be additional funding that'll be also identified, brought forth, and then allow that project to move forward when the time comes. Moving into the non-roadway portions, and this gets 1 page of summary on it because this is where we have obviously much more limited activity. So the safety efforts, right now we have a project in South Tucson, and the installation of speed feedback signs is ongoing as we speak. South Tucson is working to put those in on a couple of key corridors. That was funding that was identified. We work closely in providing support work to South Tucson, and we've got that activity up and running. Our greenways, pathways, bikeways, and sidewalk categoricals. We've got a number of bike boulevard projects, HOP projects, pathway projects that we've been a contributing funding partner on that utilize all kinds of sources. Local funds, contribution funds, federal funds that are specific to those type of features. We work strategically on that to make sure either we're the necessary component that fulfills it or that we're the match amount that allows them to be used in conjunction with federal monies. So a wide variety of these projects that have been going on over the last year, and the city's been positioned to be able to advance their contracting methodology. And they've got several others that are going to be going out and hitting the street for advertisement, as well as a couple that are going to be starting out on the east side here in the upcoming weeks, not months. And then lastly, our transportation related wildlife linkages. The most active project is out on Highway 86, out on the TO Nation. We've been out there, we've been identifying originally the last piece that was supposed to accompany previous widening efforts where ADOT was out there. As part of their widening for addressing safety and clear zone issues, they were extending culverts plus upsizing them. We identified a couple of possible locations where we could put in overcrossings, but as we got further along into the concepts and the design evaluation, the impediments against overheight vehicles. This is one of the only routes throughout the southern part of the US that has unrestricted height clearances. So we were going to introduce an impediment and introduce a huge cost. So we tried to identify other areas where we can go under with what we call a dry land undercrossing. It's a fairly unique and innovative way. We've met with the tribal representatives. They asked for individual community input. We met with all of them, and they're going to be working to get us a letter of concurrence that would come from the individual communities, as well as then the TO Nation and the and that particular district. So as soon as we get that, we'll kick the design activities into full gear. ADOT is the lead delivery entity on this because it's on their facility, but the TO Nation is the driving entity, which is why we're making sure they're on board with the revised configuration out there. With that, what didn't I hit? What do you want to go back on, or what can I clarify that I flew through too fast?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple comments and then a question. First of all, I'd like to compliment the excellent summary that Rick provided on the roadway elements and Jim and the financials. My main comment is it would appear based on the summary that the bulk of the roadway element expenditures fall within the corporate limits of the city of Tucson. I would hope, or I'd like to assume that this may go a long way toward turning the city's mind around about continued participation within the RTA. If you have any opinion on that, I'd appreciate. Whether you agree or not is not important. I just, that's my sense of the impact that this summary of current projects will have. It should turn the city of Tucson's attitude around a little bit. That was my comment.
I mean, I think you bring up a good point. I think that's going to be critical to demonstrate to not only all the residents of the community that we're following through on this, but that these areas are getting the delivery they expect and the improvements are coming. So that's, from my experience, that's always been a positive message. We win a lot of battles when people go, well, what have you done for me? Thank you. Let me show you. So I would like to think that same thing too.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the nice compliments too.
Any other questions?
Others?
Yeah, with the 4 projects deferred to RTA next.
Yep.
What happens when if RTA next fails? And there's those 4 projects for what were they listed at 230 million?
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion on how those projects will be funded?
Too speculative. I mean, depends on how it fails, what would,
I mean, there's a no vote and it fails.
yeah.
So there's no money to come in for those projects. And I think it's very short-sighted to not be prepared for such a situation. And being an oversight committee with the mission to see that the program is implemented to its fullest, we should be discussing that at the minimum, as to how to fund those deferred projects.
And that's, I say it's speculative because there's so many steps left to be taken. We're still with the RTA, it's in the purview of the board right now. They have 3 plan options still at their disposal that they're working through. So we don't even have something to go out for draft review, comment, and public feedback. So to be able to identify what would come, what would happen if it didn't. There's too many scenarios that would materialize that I think would have different ramifications. So that's why I say it's a little bit premature on that. You're right, the board may ask for different feedback as that progresses, or should that scenario arise?
So with a vote in May of 2025, we would have all of a year to determine how, if it would fail, how to fund those deferred projects as well as the projects that are currently underfunded.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that would be up to the board as to whether they're going to repackage it, regroup and regather it, go for a different election, take a different tact. That's why it depends on what happens, how it happens. But I think based on the dialogue I've had at the boards, the TMC levels, the CAC levels, and what I've heard, failure is not the let's plan on that. What are we going to do? It's make it pass. We're committed to it. That's why I think you've seen the things take the pace they have. Why you've seen the discussions go the way they have. Well, why don't they just move on it? Because nobody wants to fail. That's the commitment I've heard at all 3 primary levels that have been actively involved in that. So I guess I'm putting my bag of hope on that one too, and believe that that's a reasonable, prudent, and the most responsible way to help it.
Rick. Just a comment that most of the self-help counties that have these sales taxes, most of the ones that have had them have renewed them. The renewal rate has been extremely high, at least from what I've observed.
That's encouraging. I hope that's, want that to continue.
Rick, and I guess just to clarify too, at this point, there is no backup plan. Like if it were to not move forward with RTA next, there is no additional funding that would be part of the existing plan. It would just be something that would have to be explored at that time if it were to fail for any of the shortfalls, correct?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I said.
Just making sure that I'm in.
Yeah, there's a number of things that have to be discovered unknown. Other activities we're gonna be sharing with the board of things we're working to engage and move forward with, including ensure that we've got local commitments that have been brought to the table that have been identified and promised as part of the 06 plan. So there's many moving pieces to really say, if X happens, then we'll go Y. Just get it boiled down to if X happens, we're right now with a big piece of the alphabet.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment I want to make. This Saturday is going to be the celebration of the 10th year of the streetcar. So I encourage everyone to take advantage of the very warm activities that are going to be scheduled during the day. It reminds me of when we opened the streetcar on the 10th with the horse troughs of ice water and stuff. So anyway, please come out and celebrate the streetcar, a successful RTA project.
Is it still free?
Yes,
And how long is that gonna be for you?
I think the city council approved it for another year, or at least through December, so. Can't beat the price.
Thank you for that information. Anybody else?
I was at the inaugural streetcar when this committee here actually got to ride it before the public got to ride it.
Oh,
And 10 years just seems to go really fast.
it does. Go by it right now if you want. All right. You want to officially adjourn since you're really the chair now?
Yeah, I apologize for being late. Yeah, so I guess if, do we need to ask for a motion to adjourn? All right. All right, and I guess we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Under this part.